Cargo cult cybersecurity. Let's talk about degaussing. Degaussing is something that comes up on the CISSP exam. It comes up in a number of places, but I can tell you that only once in my 25 or so year career in cybersecurity have I ever even seen a degausser. And it was in the home of a gentleman who employed me to do some computer and electronics work back when I was attending university. And it was only used for supposedly, it was a very old unit. It was like a handheld sort of thing. And you're supposed to pass it over. I think we were attempting to use it on, well, we never really seriously used it for anything, but I think he had it for use on tapes and floppy disks. But I have never seen a degaussing machine in a commercial installation ever. Just once at his house. That's the only time I've ever seen it. In all of the compliance regimes I've worked with, it's never come up. Nobody has used a degausser in real life that I have ever seen. If your organization uses a degausser, please leave a comment. Let me know, what do they use it for? What model degausser is it? How do they even know it works? See, here's the thing. Whenever you talk about erasing media, especially on CISSP exam and other things, degausser always comes up. Is it actually an option? I say no. Let's take a look here. So if you search for degaussing and cybersecurity, you come across a number of different things. These guys actually apparently sell a degausser. What is degaussing? Degaussing is a method of permanently erasing data from working and non-working hard drives, tape, and floppy. Degaussing completely sanitizes the media of data in seconds by delivering a powerful magnetic pulse that instantly destroys all magnetic domains on the disk platters. And of course, this is a very simplified explanation. It actually creates rapidly reversing magnetic fields, right? So you're not magnifying all the magnetic domains in the media one way or the other. You're basically flip-flopping back and forth, kind of like scrambling or basically neutralizing all the magnetic domains on it so that in the end, the media is effectively not magnetized at all anymore. That's the idea. What do they have to say here? Is degaussing effective? Now, though degaussing is generally considered extremely effective, efficacy depends on the magnetic field strength of the degausser in comparison with that of the media device that it is degaussing. That is very important. Yeah, it's generally considered extremely effective because the vast majority of people who talk about degaussing have never really looked into it, have never done it, have never tested it. There is something called magnetic coercivity. Coercivity, also called the magnetic coercivity or coercive field or coercive force. This is critically important as hard drives have become denser and denser. The magnetic coercivity of the media has increased by a lot. In fact, there's a heat-assisted magnetic recording, hammer hard drives now. You actually have to heat up the spot. And I'm not sure if they use a laser or microwave or some sort of RF-induced heating or what. But in order to lower the coercivity to the point where they can actually induce a magnetic domain there to hold a particular orientation, they got to heat it up. What's going to happen if you put that kind of hard drive in a degausser? So that's an issue. For one thing, nobody really knows the magnetic coercivity of their media, and there are new hard drive technologies, new densities coming out every, I don't know, regularly every year, whatever. I have right here an 8 terabyte Seagate Barracuda hard drive. 8 terabytes. How many, you know, bits per inch or whatever would that be? And they don't really use metrics like that on hard drives. They used to on tapes, so maybe they still do. I don't know. But the magnetic coercivity on something like that is huge. And then, of course, on this hard drive, it's contained inside of a metal case. This looks like stainless steel here on top. This might be steel here on the bottom. I don't know. This is effectively like building a Faraday cage around the magnetic media. That's going to block the magnetic field from getting in, right? So I would think that to have any hope of using a degausser to wipe this drive, you would have to, at the very least, take the platters out. And even then, I am skeptical that it would actually work. You would need a modern degausser with a very high field strength, and you would need to take the case off. And in order to figure out whether this is even likely to work, you would need some sort of physicist, I presume, to do the math on this, to figure out whether that sort of field, which is being generated by your degausser, is going to wipe this drive. Here is the Wikipedia article on degaussing. This is worth going through also. Between the degaussing article and the coercivity article, I think one could probably come to a fairly well-informed opinion. Now, they talk about degaussing submarines and all kinds of neat applications here. But there are also, there's a section on magnetic data storage media. Irreversible damage to some media types. Remember, these modern hard drives, they actually have formatting, factory formatting built into the media. So if somehow you were able to degauss this, the drive's trash. You're gonna shred it or throw it in the recycle bin or e-waste or something. You're never gonna be able to use it again. Once upon a time, you could actually format your own hard drives, but I think it was when IDE came along, that went away. It's got factory formatting, nothing you can do about it. Now, when you tell your operating system to quote unquote format a drive, you're putting a file system on the drive, maybe a partition table and or file system. You can't format hard drives anymore, and you've not been able to for like 20 or 30 years. Not since the MFM RLL days, right? So, long time ago. Modern drives, once if you somehow were able to degauss it, it's trash. Tape, I don't know. I don't think there's any formatting on tape from the factory. So you might be able to zero out tape with a degausser. But the thing is, again, what is the magnetic coercivity of the media and how strong is that field? And if you've never tested it before on that media, if nobody has, how do you know it's going to work? Are you really going to risk your company's data being exposed by taking a wild guess at whether degaussing is going to work on that particular media? And then here's the other thing, of course. How do you test it? How do you test that your degaussing has worked or not worked? I mean, I suppose you might be able to verify that it hasn't worked by plugging in the drive or trying to read the tape or whatever and see if you can get any data off of it. That's one way. But presumably, if we are going to the effort of degaussing a drive, we are maybe concerned about state actors or something like that, right? Maybe your system can't read it because the magnetic domains are now too weak. Maybe you've not thoroughly degaussed it. There may be a way for someone to recover the data. There's just no good way to test whether degaussing really works other than to try to read the data back. Even then, I don't consider that to be a very reliable test. The only way I would ever consider degaussing to be worthwhile is if a physicist or someone who knows this stuff actually ran the numbers and was able to tell you whether it is plausible that it would work. And then ideally you would have somebody do like, what's it called? Spin stand microscopy, right? And it's almost like using there's like an analog of scanning electron microscope or even like atomic force microscope. There are ways to go over this stuff to measure the magnetic domains. I can't remember what the name of the device is called, other than it's used in spin stand microscopy. But there are ways to check if the data is really plausibly recoverable, even by a state actor. But I have absolutely no faith in degaussing. Oh, and for every hard drive model that you bring in that you might plan to degauss, you're going to have to run the numbers again and figure out whether it actually works, and then actually to see if it's even plausible, I would presume, and then degauss it, and then have some sort of test procedure, see if it actually worked. Why bother? That's not worth it. It's not worth talking about degaussing. You're much better off to simply read the drive. Oh, overwrite it with just all zeros once. And I've got another video coming up on that somewhere in this playlist eventually. But all you have to do is overwrite it once and then shred it, and then you're good to go. Now, of course, if you're DoD or whatever, then you got to do whatever thing your rules require. But for commercial usage, at the very least, overwrite it once, shred it, call it a day. Drives are cheap in the grand scheme of things. How much is a degausser? You can go look at that other website and see what their degaussers cost. I've actually looked a long time ago. It was thousands and thousands of dollars. And then the next time hard drive technology improves and the magnetic coercivity goes up, maybe that degausser won't work anymore. You have to run the numbers, do some tests. Not worth it. From a business point of view, I'm pretty sure it's going to be cheaper. Just reuse the media in the same security domain where it once was, in the same trusted domain. Or if that's not possible and you really need to make sure the data is gone, give it a once overwrite, shred it, done. And that is why I consider degaussing to be cargo cult security. Once upon a time, when magnetic coercivities were low and it was quite feasible to build a device that would create an alternating magnetic field that would basically neutralize all the magnetic domains on a device, wiping out the data, then fine. And, once upon a time, that may have worked. Nowadays, it is just not practical, not feasible, not testable, but there's a holdover, right? It's like the people who write the CISSP questions say, I had to learn this stuff, so you're going to have to learn it too, even though it's wildly out of date. It's the if we had to learn about buggy whips still, an outdated technology replaced by the automobile. There's really no need to be talking about degaussing unless you're doing some sort of technological archaeology, or you're teaching a history class, maybe at the Computer History Museum up in San Jose. They've got a degausser and some talk about the old school magnetic media and how you could wipe it. But yeah, it's just cargo cult security. The only reason people talk about degaussing is because they once talked about degaussing, and it gets handed down from generation to generation. Now, on the one hand, you might say, I'm perpetuating this talk of degaussing. Even addressing it gives it like an air of credibility, like it might plausibly be an option. And that's really not my intent here. My intent in this whole series is just to make people aware that even though we talk about certain things, it's really not a thing anymore. That's why degaussing is cargo cult security.